Unlike any XK that's gone before, this one has a manual gearbox, and you can do 58 miles an hour in first. They've also changed the rear suspension, which was always an XK Achilles heel. In fact, they've changed the entire rear end and fitted a limited slip dick, which means you can do this.
If you try to do this in a normal XK, you'd spin. But this just grips and goes. It's a cat. Gone feral.
I love this car, but sadly, they can't put it into production because Jaguar has a sister company, Aston Martin, and this would jump up and down all over Aston's new car, the DB7 GT.
This shape has been with us for 10 years now, but neither Time nor Aston's misguided attempts to improve it with new wheels and flared sills have managed to ruin it.
For the GT, they've really gone mad. There's a new boot lid with a sort of spoiler on the end of it, there are lumps on the bonnet with louvres, and there's a new radiator grille. Now, all these things are terrible, but look at it this way. When Sean Connery grew a beard, my wife still fancied him. Inside, you still get a handmade feel. When I close the centre console lid, for instance, the ashtray opens. And this window doesn't close properly, so once you're going more than, say, 50 miles an hour, you get a little squeak of wind noise. Mind you, that's not the most annoying sound that the Aston makes. You can stop this bong by closing the door, but then when you turn the ignition on, you get a new bong. It's presumably for the American market. Remind them that they're in a car. Actually, you couldn't sell this to an American. It wouldn't fit. I mean, I don't. There's nowhere for my left leg. There's nowhere for my head. You have to remember that underneath everything, this is basically a Jaguar XJS. It's a 30-year-old design. And how much are they charging for all this? £104,000.
It's time, therefore, to tuck the DB7 up in bed with a nice mug of cocoa and let Jaguar make that brilliant XKRR instead. Except for one tiny detail.
This GT version is not just a cynical marketing exercise. It's not just a beard to cover up the wrinkles. What it is amazing.
It may be cramped, old and expensive, but it is epic fun.
The old DB7 was never that much cop to drive, but in this they've been through it with a fine-tooth comb, changing just about everything. Rear wishbones, damper settings, they've stiffened up the bushes at the front, and I cannot tell you, I cannot stress enough just how much of an improvement it is. It's not just better than the old DB7. I don't know of any other car which offers such an intoxicating blend of grip, handling, and surprisingly, ride comfort. Oh, and there's something else in the mix as well. Power! God, it's fast!
Sounds good too. Listen to this. The 6-litre V12 is more powerful than you get in a normal DB7, and then there's its party piece.
Let me show you something. I'm going to stop, put it into 4th gear, and off we go. sets off fine in fourth, foot hard down, and we're now going 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, 70, 80, really into its stride now, 90, 100, really gathering pace. Still in fourth, I haven't changed, 120, 130 miles an hour, 135, we're on the rev limiter, that's 0 to 135 in one gear.
For the last few years, the DB7's been an ageing rocker, still trying to cut it in a Coldplay MP3 world of Porsche 911s and Foo Fighter Ferraris. But now, thanks to a cocktail of Botox and Viagra, it's up there with the best of them.
This is Rachel Point Tower Block in Hackney, East London. Former home to around 200 people, 23 stories of late 1960s dream housing. Well, in a few minutes this monument to miserable Britain will be reduced to a pile of rubble. The building is meticulously laced with high explosives. When they go off, this street in the sky will be brought down to earth with a bang. Ah, you're thinking, I bet they've parked the old Toyota right next to it. But you'd be wrong, because we've come up with something much better. That's 240 feet up. We're really not mucking about this time. There are 12,500 tons of council concrete in this building. Nothing can possibly survive what is about to happen here. Do you think it'll survive?
No.
You never know what's going to happen. Could just disappear in with a pile.
Yeah, but what have you done? You set fire to it, you've hit it with a wrecking ball, you put it in the sea. I think this will probably finish it off.
It's not going to survive.
Do you want to bet?
Yeah.
How much?
£10.
Well, I'll have a tenner with you, but you won't be able to drive it away.
It's going to get expensive, isn't it? Right. Here we go.
Stop it there!
You've got to be joking!
Why have you stopped it?
I'll show you what happened later.
That's evil!
It stops people turning over to Heartbeat. You see, on paper, the new 5 Series is even better than the old one. It's lighter, faster, roomier, and it has more gadgets. But none of that matters for the moment. The important question is this. Is it ugly? The BMW 5 Series was always a very conservative car. But that also meant that it was discreet and inoffensive, and very businesslike, a bit like a good receptionist. And like a good receptionist, everybody wanted one. Not anymore. This new look is controversial. It's all odd angles and edges. And if you don't like the outside, the bad news is they've done it in here as well. I know some of the 5 Series faithful, and I also know that, without question, they're going to be put off by this new one. However, I like it. I think it's modern and groovy. It'll take a bit of getting used to, I know, but, you know, the good stuff always does. Anyway, there's a lot more to life than just good looks. I'm just as interested in personality. Given the way BMW's always boasting about ultimate driving machines and what have you, you'd expect that this 5 Series would be very, very good to drive, and it is. It's front-engined and rear-wheel drive, but more importantly than that, They've used a lot of aluminium in the bodywork to keep the weight distribution absolutely spot on, and this is very good for feel. And then we come to the engines. This is a 530i. It's powered by a 3-litre straight-six petrol engine, and it's lovely. For exactly the same money, which is a fibre under £31,000, you can also have a 3-litre diesel. I've tried that as well, and it is, frankly, astonishingly good. So, as management types would say, that's all the basic boxes ticked. But there's more. This car is dripping with what those same people would call intelligent solutions. There's a system called Dynamic Drive, which gives you a nice, comfy ride under normal conditions, but then firms up the suspension under hard cornering. So it's soft when you're just cruising along, but it becomes all taut when you're giving it the berries. It may cost an extra 1,500 quid, but the thing is, it works, so I'll have it. And I wish I could say that about another new gizmo called Active Steering. It's supposed to make the steering more direct at low speeds to make it easier to turn corners, but less direct at high speeds so the car doesn't become twitchy on the motorway. Or at least, that's what it said in the brochure. But to be honest, I just can't really tell the difference. So I'm saving my 830 quid, spending it on American hard gums. And I haven't finished yet. Now, the old 5 Series famously had more computing power than the Apollo spacecraft that went to the moon. But this one seems to be boldly going where no executive car has gone before. Most of the dashboard buttons have been replaced by a TV screen and this sort of upturned pie dish down here. It controls everything. The air conditioning, the stereo, the sat-nav, even how long the lights stay on after you've parked up at night. This is my favourite, though. It's a sort of radar parking device. Normally, I look for really easy parking spaces, but in the BMW, I look for the tricky ones, just for the fun of it. So there we go. It's great to drive, and it comes with its own amusement arcade. The 5 Series is still a very good car, still a great piece of German engineering. It's just that it's exchanged the easily digestible looks of Tom Cruise for the more challenging physiognomy of that Gerard Doopy-Doo bloke. So, what about the rivals? There's the Jaguar S-Type, a great drive, but look at its face. And there's the Mercedes E-Class, a fabulous car for your retirement. Choosing a 5 Series used to be considered a bit of a no-brainer. It still is.
This shape is primeval, part of the landscape. And just as a caveman got the jitters when he saw the outline of a saber-toothed tiger, I'm pre-programmed to start shaking when I see this. So, which member of the 911 species is prowling around our track?
This is the GT3, a Porsche that offers you less, so it can give you so much more. It's been stripped of all creature comfort, so there's no sat-nav, there's no air conditioning, less soundproofing, even the carpets are thinner. No fancy leather seats in the front, and no seats at all in the back. And it's all in the name of saving weight. It makes no apologies for what it is. So if you want a comfy ride, get another car. If you want to be cool on a hot day, get another car. If you want height adjustment on the seats, which I don't, get another car.
But what they've left behind is good stuff. For instance, look at the brakes. The calipers are yellow, not the usual Porsche red, and they signify something important. The discs are ceramic. Sounds like pottery, but it means they can cope with enormous punishment without overheating and fading.
And then there's the engine. Oh yes, the engine. It's hand-built from exotic materials like titanium, and it's probably the most important part of the car, which is good because it costs 40 grand. Shame then that you can't really see it. It's in here somewhere, behind this old washing machine. And it staggers me when I think where it is, still hanging out over the edge at the back. Now, technically, that's just wrong. It's like building a pyramid with the pointy bit at the bottom. It was a daft idea when they first did it 40 years ago, and on paper, it still is today. That should be rubbish.
It should be up to the usual old 911 tricks. All that weight at the back, swinging round like a big pendulum, ready to punish you the first time you run out of straight road. And talent.
So you'd think that over the years they'd try and inch the engine forwards.
Now, sir, look at our lovely new headlamps.
Meanwhile, the engine's coming towards the front, but no. German engineers don't do U-turns, so it's still out there at the back.
Wherever it is, though, what an engine.
And the figures speak for themselves. 0 to 60, 4.5 seconds. Top speed, 190.
And for once, it's not scary using all that power.
In the bad old days, to try and counter the handling problems, Porsche tried crude Heath Robinson measures. They stuffed the front bumper with lead to try and balance it.
But none of it worked. In the 70s and 80s, the 911 was the Grim Reaper's company car. Huge crowds would gather at roundabouts to watch fat stockbrokers climb trees in their Porsches.
Nowadays, though, they're a little more scientific. They've mastered the suspension and honed and polished their car until they're left with this magnificent creation. This is an amazing machine. You can put it where you want it and then hold it in huge slides. Don't worry, I'm not the drift gun. Look, I'm going sideways. Look at that! The engine's at the wrong end, yeah. So what? Sure, it's a flaw, but it's a flaw like Cindy Crawford's mole, J-Lo's enormous buttocks. It's become its defining feature. It's the whole point of the car. The GT3 is final and absolute proof that evolution works.
And after 40 years, this isn't just good, this is the best 911 ever.
Do you know, that's it. That has made up my mind. I'm convinced I'm going to go straight home tonight, rip the back seats and all the carpets out of my old 911 and turn it into a mini one of these. It's fantastic.
No, it won't work. You'll just end up with an upturned bathtub with no seats in it.
You are a
However,
Yes.
I've driven this year, and you know I'm a bit of a Ferrari man.
Footballer. Yeah.
This was the best car I've driven all year. GT3. I never thought I'd say that of a 911.
I can't believe you are, but-
I adored it.
I'm glad to hear you say it. It is absolutely fantastic. But of course, there is just one test left for it, the Stig. Now, before we sent him off to HMS Invincible, which we'll see in a short while, as a bit of practice, because it is bucketing out there, we sent him out on the track in this. So, schnell, Herr Stigmacher. And he's off! Now the track surface was soaking. Look at that spray. So this is going to be very lively out there. Be careful, Stig. Steady.
And we made our love on
Oh dear. Stig's sucking up to Martin Kemp. I think that's shameless. Now we go round Chicago. Look, he really is having to work to keep the GT3 in check here. Going to be going into the hammerhead. Now, this could be the biggest test so far. You can actually see the front end lifting under the power. This is not a day for a rear-engine car at all. Definitely not a day for a rear-engine car out there. That is so difficult in the wet. Blasting out of the follow-through, and he's going to lose it. Hang on there, Stiggy. Look at that. Not even breaking into a sweat. The last two bends now. Is he going to keep it off the grass? Tidy through Gambon at the end and across the line in.
Now, this is important. Wet track, the fastest wet lap we've ever had so far is a 911 Turbo, which, of course, has four-wheel drive. This doesn't, and it did it in...
I cannot believe this. In the wet, 1 minute, 27.2. That's just... look at that! That's faster than an Evo 8 in the dry. That's a... if that had been dry, I don't even think what it would have done it in.
No.
That's got to be...
Anyway, after that momentous drive, he went off and he joined the Navy.
HMS Invincible. 20,000 tons of aircraft carrier and home to a fleet of Harrier jump jets. This plane goes from 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds and is hitting 100 miles an hour by the time it reaches the end of the 200-metre runway. And that has given the Stig his biggest challenge yet. 100 miles an hour in 200 metres. Obviously, he needed a special kind of vehicle. And this is it. The old Top Gear Jag. Bought for a couple of £100, it was stripped of its fat and fitted with nitrous injection. That meant 500 brake horsepower. In a drag race in the last series, it beat just about every supercar on the planet. But is it enough here? Top Gun versus Top Gear. 100 miles an hour in 200 metres, and unlike the pilot, the Stig must leave himself enough space to pull up again. He's ready.
And he's off. There we go. Now he's got to get to 100 and then stop again. Here we go. That's too fast. That was not supposed to happen. And that is unquestionably the end of our Jaguar. But what about the Stig? That is all that was there. The Navy divers went down, but they couldn't find anything.
Right, we've got a bit of a sort of Street Heroes theme going on this week, and look what I've got. If I could only have one drink for the rest of my life, it would be a pint of bitter. And if I could only drive one supercar, it would be this. The Aston Martin Vantage. It's superb. In the 1970s, Aston Martin was in trouble. It had turned into a maker of soft GT cars. And then, in 1974, it went bust. Meanwhile, the opposition was on a roll. The Italians were saving weight and putting the engine in the middle. The Germans were still putting it in the back, but with stunning results. Something had to be done. So, Aston's engineers, backed with cash from another optimistic owner, took one of their standard two-door coupes, whipped the engine out, gave it 40% more power, bolted it back in, fiddled with the suspension, and tarted up the bodywork a bit. And then, I like to think, they went to the pub. And they'd earned a drink, frankly, because what they had produced was, to my mind, the definitive 1970s supercar. In order to understand the impact of the Vantage, I want you to imagine a simple scene down your local boozer. Now, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Maserati, Porsche, all that lot, they're the blokes round the bar with the big opinions, giving it lots of that. Aston Martin is the quiet bloke in the corner, with his pint of best and the crossword. And then, suddenly, he decides he's had enough. So he gets up, he takes them all outside, and he gives them a bloody good hiding. That's exactly what the Vantage did. At its launch in 1977, it was the world's fastest production car, beating the Ferrari Daytona to 60 miles per hour. Only by a tenth of a second, but in a bar brawl down at the Rack and Pinion, that was enough. Aston was back in business and showing how the future of the British supercar would be. Big, front engine, rear-wheel drive, weighty, well-built, not to be messed with. And it was this approach that would set them apart from the rest of Europe. The Italians, you see, would concentrate on making a really, really fast car, but then they'd start to worry about all the practical stuff, like where's the driver going to sit, and can he see out, and how are you going to join up all those wires that make the lights work? The British way, however, is to start with a normal car and then make it very fast. Think of the Jaguar XJR. It's one of the world's most comfortable saloon cars, and it just happens to go like a stabbed rat. So, this Aston's actually perfectly comfortable. I can get in and out okay, I can see where I'm going, I can see behind me, it's even got quite a decent boot. I mean, it'll still pull my face off if I wanted to, but most of the time it just sort of soothes my fevered brow. And then there's the engine. There's no high-rev melodrama here, just a big, lazy 5.3-litre V8. Say you wanted to bang in a nail, you could belt it really hard with a little hammer, or you could give it a tap with a really big one. The Aston's engine is a sledgehammer. Right, let's meet some more people who might appreciate it. Here we are at the Campaign for Real Ales Festival in Chapel. These chaps can tell you the specific gravity of 300 ales, all in the time it takes me to sink a swift pint. This is where the honesty and goodness of real beer is preserved and honoured.
This is serious business drinking this stuff.
What is a proper pint?
High quality malted barley.
A decent beer is really, you've got the brewer's heart and soul in it, you know.
Traditional ingredients.
It is simple, but it is also complicated as well.
And a careful selection of hops.
What's 501 minus 137?
Why are you trying to trick us?
Yeah, see, they're not real beer drinkers. They don't play darts.
No, it's darts.
So, beer isn't complicated. It's just a few simple ingredients all brewed up together. But you could still get it wrong. I mean, you could get lager. Supercars aren't complicated either. Power, good looks, a great noise. But you could get that wrong as well. You could end up with a Ferrari Testarossa. Aston Martin, though, got it spot on. I cannot remember ever wanting a car as badly as I want this Aston. It is fantastic. I absolutely love it. And the thing is, so does everyone else. Look, if I were driving a Porsche 911 down this street, some of the villagers would secretly hate me. But everybody loves the Aston. It may be rare and a bit pricey, but somehow it's of the people. This is the way a British supercar should be. Its values are sound and robust. It's like these magnificent men. They carry a torch for purity, and even though they may drop it occasionally, they are warriors, guardians of a simple faith, their beer. Proper beer, the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. One is simple, straightforward, and for people who don't want anything too fancy. And the other's a pint. Cheers.
Fabulous car, that.
Absolutely brilliant. I'd love one.
Word of warning, though, don't think you can go out there and buy a cheap one. You have to spend at least 50,000 ready for a good one.
Which is a bit steep. Frankly, it knocks it off my Chrissy Prezzy list, if I'm honest.
We made a decision. We would not squander the licence fee payers' money on airfares jetting off to the other side of the world to drive cars. We would wait for them to come to us. This was a hard and fast rule, and it would never be broken.
I've come to Detroit, which in my defence is not exactly Saint-Tropez. God may have created the world in 6 days, but while he was resting on the 7th, Beelzebub popped up and did this place. Back in the 60s, Detroit was the home of Motown and Motor City. But the riots of '67 left it a deserted and shattered shell.
So, I haven't come here for a holiday. I've come here for something even better.
This is the new Ford GT. It's the first proper supercar ever made in America. It was built to celebrate Ford's 100th birthday. But there's a lot more to it than that. Back in '62, Ford tried to buy Ferrari, but at the last minute, Enzo pulled out of the deal. Henry Ford was livid and ordered his British division to build a car that would crush those eye-tie, toe-rag, scumbag, pony-assed heaps of junk. This is the car that resulted. Called the GT40, it beat the Ferraris at Le Mans for 4 years on the trot. It transformed the way we thought about Ford, and it left a lasting impression on a small 6-year-old boy from Doncaster. Me.
Over the years, there have been a couple of attempts to try and rekindle the GT40 magic. There was the GT70, which I bought. Here it is, look, doors open and everything. Fantastic. And then in 1995, there was the GT90.
I actually drove this and it was horrid. Had a top speed of 40 and it handled like it was in a cartoon. Ford realised that the only way forwards was to go backwards. This is the result. It looks almost identical to the old GT40, although because this one was built in America, it is bigger than the one built in Britain, longer, wider and taller, but still just as good looking. This car shows that the desolate and smashed city of Detroit, one of the most dangerous places on Earth, is not quite dead. It's still coughing up blood and guts. Don't think, however, that this is just some evolutionary throwback. Ford wanted it to be much more than a pretty face.
They wanted it to handle like a Lotus Elise, sound like a Honda NSX, shock like a Lamborghini Diablo, and go like a Ferrari 360. Now on that last front, the speed thing, I think they may have overdone it.
You see, it offers up 500 brake horsepower, and that's 100 more than you get from a 360. And you get twice the torque over twice the rev range. So with its top speed of 200 miles an hour, this thing once again will blow Ferrari into the middle of next week.
obviously, you don't get the sense that the engine was made by craftsmen using techniques passed from father to son over the generations, because, of course, it wasn't.
Actually, the 5.4-litre supercharged V8 is lifted out of one of Ford's pickup trucks.
This, then, is a blue-collar car with a blue-collar punch. It's a working-class hero. Let's go hunting for aristocrats. Shout them to death.
Of course, Americans have never had a problem making stuff go fast in a straight line. The Space Shuttle, the Corvette, the Boeing 747, and so on.
But they have never, and I've checked this out with all the experts, they've never made a car that can go round corners properly. Until now.
The ride comfort's a bit shabby, but as far as handling and grip are concerned, it is epic. So it goes fast, handles well, looks astonishing, and we haven't even got to the second best thing about it yet.
The clutch is so light, even someone from a Lowry painting could press it. The steering's light, the gearbox is light, I've got air conditioning, I've got a stereo, I've got electric windows, I've got central locking, and yet none of the essence of the GT40 has been lost. Look at these doors, for instance. They still cut into the roof. And just like on the old car, you can see the engine through the back window. Mind you, not as well as if you open up the clamshell. Oh, look at that. Look at it! Makes me feel 6 years old all over again. In fact, I think I just wet myself.
Amazingly then, Ford seems to have done it. The GT does handle like a Lotus, it does shock like a Lambo, and it goes harder and faster than a Ferrari.
And now we get to the best thing about it. It's priced like a Ford.
Even though it'll only be built in tiny numbers, it's going to be less than £100,000. That's 8,000 less than the Ferrari and 17,000 less than the Lamborghini Gallardo.
I love this thing. I love it even more than I thought I was going to. Feel that power.
I love it mostly, though, because it takes you back to a time when Detroit was humming to the petrol-head rhythm of the Motown sound. You're all right. A time when the Temptations provided the descant and the factories were on bass. A time when the street echoed to the sound of dancing and the roar of Last Chance heroes in their V8 muscle cars racing between the lights.
I've always wanted to do this.
Was that legal, sir?
Well, I don't know. The thing is when we said we were going to film in the middle of Detroit, which is kind of even more dangerous than Birmingham, we got 4 police patrol cars to follow us everywhere, and I did that charging off 120 miles an hour right through the city centre, got back expecting them to say, "Have you been smoking?" And they were just sitting in their patrol cars eating donuts. Couldn't give a damn.
We're talking about the nation that won the Battle of Britain.
Absolutely. Ben Affleck did that on his own.
And they rescued Europe from Sir Winston Hitler.
They did.
If I remember rightly.
What made it particularly good was when I was driving around Detroit in that thing, everyone you see, all 4 of them, they're, "Hey, nice Ferrari!" Every single one of them.
What happens if you're the kind of person who has to have the latest titanium palm top coffee machine? What are you going to go for? You can forget the likes of Ford and Honda. Wrong badge, wrong message.
You need something with a bit of style and pizzazz, but nothing that requires effort. So, the Alphas and TVRs are out too. But something has arrived that might just do the job. And would you look at those? This is the Renault Megane CC, and this is the Peugeot 307 CC. We'll take them both together because they kind of look the same, cost the same, and do the same. And I've brought them for a little drive around London's Docklands, the epitome of modern Britain. Docklands was a wasteland in the middle of nowhere. Now it's got fantastic new developments, but it's still in the middle of nowhere. The newcomers who live here, they have no heritage, no roots, no mention in the Doomsday Book. They earn money, they see stuff in shops and they buy it. That's just the way most of us are. Me, I'm partial to a shirt. So just why are these cars so modern Britain? Well, for one thing, they are achingly fashionable, inside and out, with designer touches everywhere. Look at that! The brushed aluminium on matte black effect. That's perfection to a bloke, that is. I'd have all my clothes in brushed aluminium and matte black if I could. In catwalk terms then, bang on. And best of all, you can pose in them all year round. The folding hardtop used to be the preserve of expensive Mercedes, and then Peugeot introduced it on the little 206cc. That became the best-selling cabriolet in Great Britain instantly. So it's a fair assumption that these two are going to sell in their billions. But if you're choosing on the roof alone, go for this Renault, because whereas the Peugeot's roof is made of mere tin, on the Renault Megane it's folding glass. So you can split them on the roof, but as for everything else, it's Arsenal versus Man United. Both have 2-litre engines with around 140 brake horsepower. Both cost around £18,000. Both have chrome gear knobs. And with some cars, you see them and say, that's a man's car. Or a girl's car. But these are neither, really. They're kind of in the middle, perhaps verging a little bit on the girly. So all things to all people for all seasons. But there's one thing missing. Neither of them is a sports car. So if it's a full-out B-road blaster you're looking for, look elsewhere. All that clever folding roof gubbins has made them heavy. They weigh more than the moon. You can get a 180 brake horsepower version in the Peugeot, but even that takes 10 seconds to hit 60. So wherever you're going, you'll not be going there quickly. But that's okay, because it's harder to window shop at high speed. Shops. Lots of shops. But for all their glamour, I don't like these cars. It's not because they're slow, it's because they are just fashion nonsense, mobile phones on wheels. There's just nothing really there. They are off-the-peg designer merchandise, bottle glamour, flat-screen tellies. Looks is everything. It doesn't matter how they work. And what they do is give the full, instant consumer hit. You see one of these cars, you want it, then you get it. And for a while, you're glad you've got it. Then in about a year, when you've pressed all the buttons and all the gizmos have gone whir, you'll be bored with it. But it doesn't matter, because by then, something else will come along. And do you know what? It makes me sick just thinking about it.
Now, earlier on I left our Toyota pickup on top of a tower block that was about to be demolished with explosives. Who would like to see what happens next? Yes! Play it. Oh dear. I'd say that was pretty Ronnied. Have you got a crowbar with you?
Yeah.
Right, is this it?
Right, this is it. I'm going to give it a go.
Okay, James. Now, we've seen that it started.
Yeah, it did start.
But did it move?
I can hardly believe this myself. Ladies and gentlemen, here it is!
I want to make sure you're being honest, OK? This is very important. When Jeremy did it, the rules were you couldn't replace any parts. No spare parts allowed. You did the same. No spare parts.
No spare parts. The mechanic reconnected the battery, put a bit of diesel in it, brum, off it went.
Well,
I just can't believe it. I mean, look at the extent of that.
It's not bad. Taxed worse.
You taxed worse. Oh, no, look here. Look, the whole chassis, well, I was going to say cracked, but split's a better word.
Yeah, well, it has actually broken in half right across, and we're in the strange situation where the bodywork is actually holding the chassis together.
Honestly, I'm stuck for... I mean, we could carry on trying to destroy it. But do you know what? I think we should build a plinth. Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Put it on there as a museum piece for all of time. What do we think? Do we do that? Yes? OK, well, there we are. On that note of unexpected generosity from our audience and in the presence of, frankly, automotive greatness, it is time to end the show. Good night. See you next week.